How's it going, everyone? It's your favorite apostates. I'm McKay.
I'm Jordan. So today we are going to be talking about a new interview that has come out featuring Kevin Franke of 8 Passengers fame. If you remember, we watched a previous video on our channel that Kevin did an interview with a random person, and we watched it, and it was
doo-doo.
it wasn't great. It's just not my cup of tea. No insult to anybody. It's just not my vibe. Not everybody likes our content either. You get over it, right? The thing is that person, like, we reacted to it, and that person, I think, got upset at our reaction, and they left like 80 comments under our video and responded to like
starting
every
at like 4
person.
or 5 in the morning.
So I don't know what that was about. Like, no disrespect to that person. I just was not a fan of the interview, but like, go off, queen, whatever. Yeah. This time around, this interview, I think, will be I have high expectations, and I do not think I will be disappointed, because this interview is being led by Dr. Julie Hanks, which is a very popular licensed clinical social worker and therapist in Utah. She specializes in working with like the Mormon cultural and religious dynamic, particularly with women, and she has a lot of helpful content on her social media profiles. I'll link them below so you can go check them out if you're interested. She has been a huge voice in this community for a very long time. And she's not afraid to stand up against stupid stuff that the church does, including like transphobia, homophobia, things of that nature. And in doing so and in promoting autonomy for women, she has often gotten a very bad rap and is very hated online. The misogyny of it all is quite intense. And so I have always had a lot of respect for her, and I used to actually work for her, in fact. I have high expectations because I think she will ask the questions about interesting dynamics and elements of this that I think we have all been wondering about. We're beyond the story, right? Like, right. We know what happened. We've hashed it out. We know what's going on here. So like, I'm more interested in like the very insightful questions that I think Julie will ask.
Before we get into it, let's hear a word from today's sponsor for this episode, Aura.
Okay, so this report is like super disturbing to me. It's a data broker report, and the amount of information on here is very unsettling, between relatives to like all the email addresses you've had in your lifetime, including neighbors. Like, I don't know why, but that one bothers me a lot. Possible water and aircraft that you might own. Just the amount of information in here is kind of frightening.
It's really unsettling to me that there are companies out there who are just scraping this data for free off of all of us, and they're turning around and making a profit off of it. And the people who are buying it are just using it however they see fit. Whether it be against scammers or advertisers or stalkers or criminals, you can fight back using Aura.
So Aura protects your privacy by identifying the data brokers that are selling your info. And then they also take care of the hard part, which is removing your information from their sites and keeping it off, which is really nice, because instead of having to go track it all down and figure out where and submit takedown requests to all these websites and do all that stuff, like, they just do everything for you.
There are other services that offer the same types of services that Aura does, but Aura really is the one-stop shop for everything that you need. You can get alerts if your personal info is found on the dark web. You can get real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, 24/7 monitoring to help keep your identity secure, a secure VPN, antivirus, password manager, and much more.
They also have US-based support available around the clock if something goes wrong. And then they also offer you $5 million in identity theft insurance protection. And they have fraud experts willing to help and support you 24/7.
You can try Aura for free for 14 days using our link down in the description and right here on screen, aura.com/JordanMK. And in those 2 weeks, Aura will have time to get to work scrubbing your personal info from these data broker sites and helping minimize your exposure.
We're not leaving ourselves vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. So thank you to Aura for sponsoring this video.
This is kind of a full circle moment because it, not in necessarily a good way considering the circumstances, but the first time that we interacted with Dr. Julie Hanks was when we did like a live stream with Mormon Stories podcast and Dr. John DeLynn about right after Ruby and Jody got arrested, and John brought on Julie, and that's where we kind of linked up. And then Jordan basically ended up applying to work with Julie. And she brought her on, and now Julie is interviewing
Kevin.
So it's like
What
a
a
full
wild
circle.
Mormon / ex-Mormon
I know,
circle
right?
of connection in this.
6 degrees of Mormonism, as
always.
we always say. I have to cut in right here because for the first little while, we actually had to redo the ad. The mics were not on, so we had to re-record all that little bit. Bear with it. It's just a couple minutes where we just have to use the camera audio. Apologies in advance.
It will be a few minutes of camera audio. You should still be able to hear it.
Sorry.
Very much.
Very sorry. I
But
didn't
then
want
it
to
will
have
go
to go
back to
back
normal.
and start from zero because some of those thoughts were not going to be able to come back to us.
Welcome to a very special edition of Ask Dr. Julie Hanks podcast. In this episode, I will be the one asking questions, and I have an amazing guest who you will be really excited to hear from. His name is Kevin Franke, and you probably know who he is, but I just wanted to start out by giving Kevin a chance to introduce himself because the media has portrayed him in a certain way, and I want you to hear from Kevin, like how he introduces himself. So welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, that's quite an introduction.
I wanted to point out, I noticed this as soon as I pulled the video up. I was like, this is the Mormon stories. And for like a true believing Mormon to go into the layer of
Mormon stories.
God's #1 hated critic.
Especially since I think one of their conditions of doing the doc with Hulu was that John wasn't participating, right?
Allegedly.
I think John said that.
Said. I don't know if he had any sort of...
Love that for him. But I was kind of surprised by this.
But it is pretty funny, in my opinion.
But, like, makes sense because it's a good studio. Like,
well, and they're
top tier equipment, like good setup. Yeah.
Thanks, Julie. So I'm Kevin Franke. A lot of people, most people would recognize me as the husband of Ruby Franke. I'm the former husband of Ruby Franke. We were divorced earlier this year. I am a dad to 6 wonderful kids. I am an engineer, a geotechnical earthquake engineer, a former professor. I am a nerd in every sense of the word. I am a good neighbor. I love watching BYU football and love watching the Utah Jazz. And I'm just a normal guy.
Thank you.
Obviously, I understand a lot of people are going to have issue with a lot of those descriptors, as do I. But if anybody is going to be able to moderate a discussion
and really get to the heart of it, I feel like
it's Julie.
Yeah.
Thank you. So you have probably been contacted or attempted to contact you by local, national, international news media, right?
Yeah, it's been pretty wild over the last few years.
I can only imagine. How come you're willing to talk with me when you've only done, 2 other interviews, like the Hulu documentary and then one other podcast, right?
Yeah.
So how come you're willing to sit down with me?
Well, one, because I know you. You know, I think we go back a couple of years.
Yeah.
We've had some really good conversations. You've been a great source of help for me in the last couple of years. And it's been really validating to hear what you've shared with me and to really feel your love and sympathy. And so I appreciate that.
Mm.
I also know that you're not necessarily interested in the crazy narrative, the popular media narrative that's out there, but you're more interested in the truth and more interested in basically the humanity in the story of the tragedy of and the rebirth really of my life and my family.
Yeah.
And that's what, I'm here to talk about today. So
wonderful.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that.
Sounds good to me. Yeah. We got acquainted. I think you reached out to me after I posted a video on Instagram and Facebook saying it was before the final judgment hearing. What would you call it for Ruby and Jody? Their sentencing.
It was either their what would you call it?
I can't think of the word.
Where they entered their
pleas. Where they entered their plea, yeah.
Or then where they were sentenced.
And I said that Jody should be held much more accountable because she was in a position of power. And as a therapist, I understand the power imbalance of a therapist-client relationship. And so I think I posted that, and then a friend showed that to you. Is that right? And then you contacted me.
A good friend of mine who...
I feel like this is, in and of itself, is also really interesting because you have to understand people online, especially Mormons online. I think a lot of them hate Julie Hanks and people like John DeLynn more than they hate the literal devil.
Well,
Like,
part of it's misogyny.
part of it is misogyny.
Part of it's misogyny for sure, but Julie kind of became, because she offered a space for women, really, to process feelings and emotions, and to, I think what it comes down to is autonomy. I think a lot of people took issue with Julie throughout her career because what I think Julie does is offer a space for women to explore how they engage with religion. Whether that's not engaging at all, whether that's engaging more, whether that's engaging less, whether that's staying in, whether that's staying out, whether that's being progressive Mormon, whether that's being cafeteria Mormon, like all of those kind of things. Like Julie creates a space for women to like be curious and think about those things and find what works for them. Like she talks about identifying how you want to engage in a way that is psychologically healthy. So like, how can I stay in the church in a way that's psychologically healthy? Or how can I leave the church in a way that's psychologically healthy? And of course, this is going to be the antithesis of the church, right? Mm-hmm. Because even though she's not leading people away from the church, like lots of people like to claim she is, that's what her behavior is interpreted as. It's like she creates a space for people to leave the church, or she's a false prophet leading people away from the church. Like, and then you combine that with misogyny, and it creates this like weapon of mass destruction, essentially, when people talk about her on the internet. Like the things you see about her, the things that people say about her online are truly some of the most heinous things that I've seen. Even before I worked for her, it was always astounding to me that she was able to like just exist and tune these things out and not necessarily engage with any of them because people come for her so hardly and so intensely. And so the fact that Kevin would have somebody, like the fact that Kevin would engage with her at all is a little bit surprising to me.
She is pretty notorious in Utah, kind of outside of Utah. I feel like people don't really know too much about her, but...
And mind you, she has stayed in the church the whole time up until recently. She only left the church recently.
Right. And like, everybody wants to say she's leading people astray, but how many people did she help decide to stay within the church, for better or for worse?
But they don't talk about
in
that.
our personal opinions or whatever. But yeah, they don't want to talk about that. So for him to reach out to her at all,
it's kind of surprising.
Is pretty surprising.
Who was a big support of me through this entire experience. She shared that.
Oh, also, Julie is not quiet about her criticisms of the church. So one glance at a social media page for Kevin, and he would understand where she stands. So.
Yeah.
With me. And it definitely resonated. And I said, okay, I definitely need to have a conversation with Dr. Hanks. So she, I think, DM'd you.
She DM'd me and gave me your contact info.
Yeah,
I think that's how. And then we've been texting and we've met a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin actually let me see the whole Connections curriculum because I was fascinated to see like what was going on underneath the surface in this Connections group. So yeah, it's fun that we've become friends. So I really appreciate you being here today. And I just I've been able to see you as a good, honest, intelligent human.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really hard to see the media paint you as a villain or as a, ignorant or some things like that. And I mean, I can't imagine how hard that's been for you. So if people, we're not going to talk a lot about what happened, right? I'm less interested in the story, but if people want to know kind of the whole backstory of the Ruby and Jody abuse case, you did a Hulu documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell people about that so they can get the whole.
This is where, if someone asks me the question, how do I learn about what happened? I will always direct them to that 3-series or that 3-part documentary series. It's called Devil in the Family. Who are out there who love to feed off of the story and exploit it themselves for their own, gain. it continues to generate a lot of attention. I mean, every day, there's still a story written somewhere in the media about it.
Wow. What do you think it is about the story that has people so fascinated that it would be the #1 documentary on Hulu?
I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think the sheer craziness of the story.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people hear the story and it's almost like, nah.
Like, you got to be kidding.
Yeah, no, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
Right? And then, you know, the story itself is just so sheer horrific that I think, unfortunately, there's a large part of that audience that's just attracted to a train wreck. And they like seeing, you know, the horrific stories. They get a hit or they take something from it. So I think that...
I feel like he's kind of describing people as if they're like, they have to be some sort of monster to be interested in this. But like, there's always that.
No.
Are you telling me that you don't look at a wreck when you're passing by it on the interstate or whatever?
I think there's an element of this that is like natural human curiosity. I think an area for further exploration, and Kevin could probably even be one that would potentially speak to this, is our, like, particularly the West's obsession with true crime.
Totally.
And like how we handle true crime. And, you know, we're not true crime creators. We kind of got slightly sucked into that element of it because of this case, because we were covering them before it became a true crime story. But like, you know, as a therapist, I joke with McKay, and at this point I probably just need to do it. But like, when I'm meeting with clients, particularly women, one of the things that I'm thinking about, and one of the things that I'm like legitimately thinking about adding into my intake paperwork, is how much true crime content do you consume a week? Because I think there's obvious like curiosity, fascination, and I'm not like a true crime hater by any means. I'm not. I think there are people who do it sometimes more ethically than others, sure. But like, I think it can become a problem. I think it becomes a problem in the way that we view other people. It can feed paranoia. It can feed anxiety. It can feed depression. It can feed isolation. It can create like a warped sense of community in terms of how we view the people around us and our neighbors. And it's a tiny little thesis of mine, but I think there is some connection between how disjointed and disconnected we feel as a community and our consumption of true crime content. Obviously, that's not the only reason we are disjointed. There are plenty of others, like, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But I think that is an element of it, because I think subconsciously this is kind of altering the way that we view things. And so I hear what Kevin is saying. I'm sure that his perspective is like, he looks at all these people profiting off of his exploitation.
Right.
But like, at the end of the day, you profited off your children for how many years? So like,
right.
I'm not gonna super hop on your train in that
we cut
aspect of it, you know?
We don't care about. He always talks about the Hulu documentary, and it seems like he's kind of bragging about how well the documentary did, and then he turns around and he's saying this.
Like, I'm happy for you,
right?
But like, it's gonna fall on deaf ears for people when you're out here talking about like exploitation, when you participated in family vlogging for how long? And like, I know you're not doing that anymore, but like,
maybe some acknowledgement would make people feel better.
And maybe he will. Maybe we're not giving him the benefit of the doubt yet, but that's just my thoughts.
So sheer horrific that I think, unfortunately, there's a large part of that audience that's just attracted to a train wreck. And they like seeing, you know, the horrific stories. They get a hit or they take something from it. So I think that's attracted a large part of the audience. I also think, though, that there's a large part of people that see an element of themselves or somebody they know in the story, and it resonates with them.
There we go. Like I said, thank you at least for being a...
I was going to say, don't say that's the whole audience, because damn, throw everybody under the bus.
Right.
Almost like they can't take their eyes away from it, even though they want to.
Yeah. I'm really curious, you know, getting to know you. I know that you're a good, intelligent, smart person. What vulnerabilities did you bring into that marriage and then into like the situation with Jody that opened you up to being vulnerable to that level of control and manipulation?
excellent question. Who has asked something like, I mean, the media has covered the story extensively. We've asked things like that, but I think that's because we're coming at it from
Right.
like the ex-Mormon perspective, right? Of like the vulnerability of being indoctrinated and being prone to cult tactics, cult manipulation, those kinds of things, high demand religion manipulation. Like, we look at it through that lens.
Yeah.
But have I heard other people ask questions in the same vein? No. But does Julie?
Julie does it.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, one of the questions that I'm most frequently asked is,
Oh, just for those who maybe don't keep tabs on everything that's going on, Kevin is engaged again.
Kevin's
That's why-
married.
Oh yeah, he got. So, I totally forgot. He got, since the last time we did a reaction to an interview with him, he got engaged and married
To a woman that looks a lot like Ruby. Also, Chad got married. And then I'm pretty sure Sherry got married as well. I think all three of them got married.
Everybody getting married.
So they're all married now.
like, how? I mean, you're a smart guy. Like, how?
Yeah.
And you know, that's a question that I've had to tackle myself. And I've had a lot of time to really reflect on that and think about it. And I've come to learn that emotional intelligence is not the same as like knowledge intelligence or just what we generally call intellect, like, you know, what you learn in school or learn from reading books.
Yeah.
You can read every book on the topic of emotional intelligence, but until you actually live it, until you actually go through the steps of growth and change, just knowing something does not necessarily equate wisdom. And so for me, it's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is just knowing a bunch of stuff. And I know a bunch of stuff, right? Yeah. I'm a PhD. I'm a civil engineer. Yeah. I've been a professor for 12 years, a very well-published, internationally recognized professor. I was like at the top of my career, winning numerous teaching awards and things. I was always near the top of my department and my college in terms of like the teaching ratings. And if anyone from the outside would have looked at me and said, wow, like I want to be like that guy. Yeah. And I wanted people to look at me and say, ooh, I want to be that guy. That I needed that
like external
validation to feel like I was enough.
Yeah.
And because the reality was that I was so incredibly insecure throughout all of my life. And I've personally found that there's a correlation between the amount of like training and education that a person seeks and obtains in their life, and usually the level of personal insecurity that they have. In other words, they're trying to compensate for that insecurity by accomplishing more and more and more and more, climbing the ladder.
Insightful. I don't necessarily disagree. I think some people do it for the love of the game, but I make fun of therapists a lot because I am one, but also because this tends to be our path. I mean, not every there are plenty of therapists who don't have traumatic backgrounds, but a lot of us do. And it's kind of a way of healing our own shit. And like a lot of us get into this, like the amount of eldest daughters who are therapists, right? Like the amount of people who take on this role because my role in childhood was helping people. Like that was my role. And so then you kind of go down that path. And I think he brings up a really good point in terms of validation, especially in Mormonism. Everything is so external. Right. So like everybody needs that external validation, be like for women through front facing like adjustments or whether it's internal, but like there's always some sort of external validation that people are fishing for. And this is such a common childhood wound that the majority of people have it. Like the majority of people have some kind of core belief that stems from the idea that you're never going to be good enough. And then we strive to do things that sort of start to fill that, but never, like a lot of times without ever really attaching or like attacking the actual problem that exists.
I feel like what he was talking about with emotional intelligence too, where it's not just something like you can read about
Yeah.
That was a theme that I observed a lot in my years throughout Mormonism, where they would kind of talk about that idea where they're like, oh, you need to like be doing all these things. You need to be reading the scriptures and repenting and all that stuff in order to, instead of just like checking the boxes. But
Mhm.
even then, like the whole, I feel like a lot of the dynamic is like, you're learning about attributes of Jesus. You're trying to emulate them because it's what everybody's doing. You're going through the motions
Yeah.
in a lot of senses. So I feel like maybe him as an adult Mormon man, having learned all this stuff emotionally through the church or whatever, you can fall into that habit of, oh, well, I'm doing this stuff, when you're just like emulating it because you're going along with
Yeah.
it,
Well, I think this is something that
with the program or whatever.
I wish he would talk more about this to men specifically, because I think this is something that plagues a lot of men. Because I think there's this assumption that just because you know things, or just because you've read a bunch of self-help books, or these things, that like you have solid emotional intelligence. And most often the case, especially when we hear it from other women talking about it online or talking about it in your personal life, you encounter a lot of men who do not have a whole lot of emotional intelligence. And that's partially on us as a society, that we don't teach these things, or we don't prioritize them because they're usually associated with femininity. I wish he would do something more with this, you know, particularly speaking at men.
Higher and higher, looking for one more rung to get above the rest of the crowd, you know.
So that was your motivation in some part?
Oh, 1,000%.
Okay.
Like
so this insecurity was driving your professional accomplishment, your need to be the best, the most
seen, the most awarded, the most, you know, celebrated. And certainly when my wife, you know, started our YouTube channel, and when she started attracting a lot of attention, and we started getting a lot of praise and paychecks from that was just like pouring gasoline on already, you know, a burning dumpster fire. And
isn't that interesting? Because we've talked about that from the lens of Ruby and even Jody, from almost like a concerning perspective between trauma or narcissistic personality traits or things of that nature. But like, it's interesting that we're seeing this exact same thing play out with Kevin, but because Kevin has always played second fiddle to Ruby, we don't ever really see these things. Like, I didn't know how respected of a professor he was because he's always played second fiddle to Ruby. Like, everything has always been about Ruby. We're not hearing about him talking about his accomplishments at work. Ruby's not going to put that on the channel. And so I think it's really interesting that for him, it was almost serving the same purpose that it was for Ruby, but like just in different ways.
Different capacity. Yeah, because I mean, pretty much all we were going off of was Write My Professor, and not all the time was it
not
very
always
kind
great in
to
there.
him.
Yeah.
So to hear him say things, and obviously
everything is subjective.
it's subjective. He works at
opinions.
BYU. There are a lot of people who have a lot of opinions about BYU's ethics and all of that, but this is engineering, so I feel like it's a whole different ball game.
so it was exactly that weakness, that insecurity, that Jody and Ruby both exploited.
Okay.
To cause me to do things that really were, you know, contrary to my better judgment.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, in the moment seemed like absolutely the right thing to do.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you brought this insecurity into the situation and this need for external validation. And so when that external validation isn't there, you just kind of do things against who you are because you're needing the approval of Jody and Ruby.
Yeah, well, somebody like me who has no like strong sense of inner strength or confidence is constantly looking for somebody to tell me what to do. And so I always have one or more people on a pedestal, right? Those are kind of what, using the you know, the language that I like to use, those are my gods, the people that are more than human to me. And
This is interesting because I think it mimics the structure of Mormonism
That's exactly what I was
really
thinking.
well.
Well, and like every facet of Mormonism
Yeah.
is like that from a very young age.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that it's exclusive to Mormonism, but
No,
there is like
is
very
religion in
specific instances, especially as a young Mormon boy. You're ordained with this power called the priesthood,
Mhm.
which is the power to act in the name of God. That is a huge responsibility, right, Spider-Man? So so like from there, there's always this hierarchy of people who are always going to be above you. When
Yeah.
you're a deacon, you're 12 years old, you could be the president of the deacons quorum, but there will always be adults there who are going to be above you. When you're a missionary, there are always district leaders, zone leaders,
Yeah.
assistants to the president. And even if you're assistant to the president, there's a mission president that's above you. You're always going to be underneath somebody else, so it creates a dynamic where there's always someone above you to look to, or someone above you who is going to be scolding you for not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. Well, and I think as a therapist, what I see is this is just a way to defer or even like have a underdeveloped sense of trust in the self is what I see with this, because you can't, like, when people leave Mormonism, lots of times people who come to me will be like, what is the answer? Or like, tell me what to do. And they'll kind of try to put me in the place of authority in their life, because in Mormonism, there's always somebody telling you, you need to be going to the temple more. You need to be going to church every day. You need to be, upping your tithing. You need to be like, there's always somebody who's going to be telling you to
Right.
do something. Right. And so if you leave Mormonism and you move that element out of it, what becomes the authority that tells me what to do with my life? Or where is the structure? What is the plan? And lots of people get really uncomfortable with that idea. And I think what I see here with, I think what Kevin's describing is if there's no trust in the self, if you can't trust your judgment, and there's no, like, self-esteem is already low, and then you're always deferring your self-interest or trust in decision-making or judgment to somebody else, that puts you in a place where I feel like you get easily manipulated. And this is where I think Mormonism really screws people, because if you have an underdeveloped sense of self, it is easier to be targeted. It's easier to be manipulated. You're more
Right.
susceptible to propaganda that way.
I mean, you look at Utah now, there are so many MLMs in Utah that financially take advantage of people. Even church leaders
Mm-hmm.
decades ago were like, we have some of the most gullible members.
Yes.
They will fall for fucking anything. So,
Well, the sense of identity is just lacking. Like, people, like, I think it's funny because people always talk about like Secret Lives of Mormon wives, and they're like, all the girls look the same. And I'm like, Mormonism isn't encouraging, in my opinion, of a developing strong identity that is not completely rooted in Mormonism. And that's not your true identity. Like, it's an aspect of your identity. It's an element of your identity. It's not your true whole picture of identity, right? And so, like, that lack of identity is going to create a focus on similarity and deferring to the norm. But, like, what gets missed in that process is you're not developing who you are. You're not developing your sense of self. You're not differentiating from the people around you. What he's describing here, I think, really makes sense in the context of everything that we know.
And so I listen to what they say. I follow what they do, follow what they teach. And I need them to tell me what to do, because I have zero confidence in myself to make those decisions correctly.
I'm curious, kind of your perspective on how LDS culture played into that or helped create that external need for validation.
Yeah,
See how she's not leading? She's not saying, like, me, I'm saying it.
right.
I'm full chest saying, yeah, this is
And
100%
that's why we're not
a
doing
product.
this interview.
That's why Kevin probably would never speak to us, but which is fine. But like, I think that's why Julie has like great skill here. But like, this is perfect because it's inserting a concept, but allowing Kevin to place it where it makes sense in his context, right? It's not saying this is definitively LDS culture, and of course you felt that way because that's how LDS culture is. It's very much allowing him
Right.
to like create the connections himself where he sees them.
I don't think there's like any aspect of LDS doctrine that I clung to that was like, you are not smart enough or you're not capable, or that's not what the doctrine says. But I think there's definitely a cultural element where we often will believe that, I need somebody else to tell me the right thing to do. because I'm not.
God, we arrived there before he could. Damn. We didn't
It's
give him a
almost like I
chance,
do
but-
this for a living.
Right?
enough. I'm not righteous enough to be able to make this decision, or I'm not mature enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not wealthy enough. And and because of all these not enoughs, it's so common in our culture to look outside of ourselves for somebody else to fix us or to tell us what to do or how to live, or, you know, to go get some like procedure or something that's going to finally make us enough.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, that vulnerability that you brought in, that need for external validation. What warning signs did you miss regarding Jody and your work with Jody because of that vulnerability and that need for external validation? Like, what, looking back, can you see things like, oh, I missed that because I was seeking this other thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, I could.
That's a whole
I could-
interview in and of
yeah,
itself.
I could like publish, you know, a volume set of all of the red flags that I've been able to look back on and see. And hindsight's always 20/20, right? But
of course.
some of the biggest ones for me, like right from the start, I feel like I had her pegged.
Really?
Right in the very beginning. And yeah, I talk about this in the documentary, and my kids do too, where it was like when some trusted, close family friends introduced us to Jody Hildebrandt with glowing and rave reviews, you know. My first exposure to Jody was some big workshop that was the title of the workshop was Love and Lust, and trying to, you know, unravel the difference between them. And I remember going to this workshop, and I arrived late, and I walked in, and like there was an energy in that room that was palpable. It was an energy that was basically like, men are horrible. That was the energy that hit me. There were probably 2 or 3 women to every man who was in there. And the women were very animated, very excited, very into what was being said, what was being taught. And the men, for the most part, were very timid, very quiet, very subdued, except for the men that were up in front, who were they were the spokespeople. They were the people that she was modeling, and all the women.
I feel like this also is an aspect that doesn't get talked about enough with Jody. Is she seems like she was filling a void that was created by a lot of the rhetoric and the teachings within the church, because a lot of the times women were the target of men's desires. And because of that, they were the ones that needed to cover up. They needed to wear modest clothes. They needed to be on their best behavior. They needed to be worthy in order for a priesthood holder man to come along and pluck them up, and they can become their helpmeet or what have you. And then along comes Jody, and she's like, these men are fucking disgusting. And obviously it's not going to be as in your face like that, but suddenly they're like, okay, she's basically saying a half truth, which is, why is it that these men need to be catered to because they have these sexual desires or whatever?
Yeah.
And then women who in the back of their minds have always been thinking that are like,
I
why
get
is it my job
You're
to police
speaking to
my
me.
husband?
Yeah.
Or, why is it my job to relieve my husband so that he doesn't go search for it elsewhere and all of these things? So she was able to kind of lure people in with that kind of thinking, which isn't entirely wrong, but when you dig further down into it, is obviously more and more problematic. But on the flip side, the rhetoric is also
Well, it's like-
problematic, which is why he walked in there and he's like,
This doesn't sound right. I think what's interesting about it is like Jody has a lot going on, right? Like probably mentally and trauma and like all of these things. And I think she exploited a problem that exists within Mormonism that many women can relate to, and instead took it to some weird, crazy extreme.
Right.
But it's funny to me because it almost is ironically funny because it's like her taking it that direction almost in her mind probably seemed more reasonable than like walking away from an organization that promotes these ideals. Isn't that kind of interesting? That like in her mind it was easier, and she's not thinking this is extreme, but in her mind, her brain took her down this path that turned into extremism, essentially, instead of just being like, the organization's teaching all these things. The organization is making women feel this way. The organization is promoting the structure that creates the patriarchal structure that creates these problems. Isn't that interesting? Maybe I don't really like this organization. Maybe I don't really like men who operate in a patriarchal mindset. Maybe I like women. Anyway, but you know what I mean? Like it's interesting to me that was the pathway that her and Ruby saw out of this mess instead of forsaking the religion that causes everything to begin with.
Which is funny also because you look at all the other stuff that she's saying, and she's very obviously a Mormon apostate. She does not agree with a lot of the teachings of the church, especially it seems she does not agree with the prophetic structure and the patriarchal structure. So she is an apostate, but she always kept that veneer because she knew that if she was outwardly critical of those ideas,
she can't manipulate.
She doesn't have her in anymore.
No, she doesn't have the people who will implicitly trust her like we've talked about because she's Mormon and because like what Kevin's talking about. She's coming with glowing reviews. Oh, she's Mormon. You can trust her. There's that implicit trust that exists.
And we're gushing and praising these men for what beautiful, strong, powerful men, righteous men these men were. And I don't want to give the impression that like I'm bitter or angry because most of those men who are up there, we've gone through a lot, and we still emerge and continue. I'll call it a distant friendship.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of empathy and compassion for those men because, like me, they got there in their own journey, and it was all through their own insecurities as well. But I still remember walking into that room and thinking, this is a cult.
Really?
And the very first words that I told Ruby after that workshop, when she's like, what do you think? I said, I really don't want to tell you what I think because you're not going to like it. No, I really want to know. And then another one of her friends came over and she said, no, I want to know what you think. Tell us. I said, this feels like a cult. Wow. And they just laughed and laughed, and they thought it was so funny.
But it's so sad to me because it's almost like I have so much, like, not for Ruby, but I have compassion for these other women. Because, like, I'm looking at it, and they're probably experiencing an environment with other women where they feel truly seen based on their concerns and the things that they don't like about this dynamic for the first time, and how overwhelming and enlightening and like community building and how like almost euphoric that feeling can be. Like, think about going to a concert where you feel connected to everybody in that like euphoric feeling. And this is the same feeling that like people get from like, you go to church and you feel like your pastor's speaking directly to you. Like there's that connection and it just feels really intense. And I imagine that's how these women were feeling. And so for anybody to come up to them after that and be like, yeah, this is a cult, they're going to be like, ha ha ha, you're just a man. Right. What do you know? Like, because they're feeling like this is truth. Like, this is connection. This is everything. So, like, I just feel for these women because it's like they could find, like, I have so much compassion for them because I understand what they were looking for. And it just so happened that Jody was willing to exploit that and manipulate that. And so I feel for them because I don't think these women, aside from Ruby and Jody, obviously, were necessarily doing anything wrong.
For me, it's the dynamic the very parallel dynamic that I see with Mormons online now, because everybody goes into the comments and they're like, this is a cult, you're in a cult. And so like how they respond is, well, if being in a cult means learning how to love each other and to love God, then yep, this is the cult of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
That's what they say now.
Okay, babe, whatever.
But I understand him. I think people who are not in a high demand religion or have experienced these kinds of things will look at this and go, okay, well, if you knew it was a cult, why didn't you leave? But like, I look at this parallels my experience going through the temple for the first time. It was distinct in my mind going through the temple for the first time that this was a cult. It was distinct to me. I'm watching people mime slitting their throats. I'm watching people with veils over their faces sitting down, staring at people, chanting in a circle. I'm like watching this experience and I'm like, this is definitively a cult. And it still took me years from that point to leave. We still got married in the temple after that.
Yep.
We still stayed in the church after those experiences. And so, like, coming to that realization doesn't mean people just like snap out of it and they're like, oh, cool. I walk away now. And like, I feel compassion for Kevin in some senses because Ruby was obviously sucked into this. And like, what was he to do at this point beyond be like, I'm not interested in doing this and participating? Probably at the cost of his marriage, right?
And the lives of his kids, almost.
Yeah, basically.
That I said that. And that was my initial instinct.
Wow.
And, you know, the way that master manipulators and predatory gaslighters, predatory cult leaders work, if she just came right over and was like, you need to do this, this, and this, you are, you know, a horrible man, I would have turned and walked away.
Yeah.
But that's not how it happened. You know, she came over and was like, wow, what an outstanding man you are. You're just such a model man. And you know, Jody, right from the start, was so good at identifying my vulnerabilities. And she knew just how to like stroke my ego.
Praise you.
And pump me up with praise and things that just got me, oh, I like this person. You know, I had this person wrong. Like, this person is great.
But I mean, it makes sense. Because if she's just at these events talking about how terrible men are and going off about how terrible men are, and she's trying to get like men into this organization, that's not going to work. Nobody's going to go for that. She knows on some level that she has to like manipulate and stroke some egos and do some like finagling to get these men to feel comfortable with her or at least fulfill something that they need. So she then has them right where she wants them. I mean, she's been manipulative at her core from the beginning. It's kind of crazy to see.
Well, I'm sitting here like, yeah, you could talk about Jody Hildebrandt like that, but what is the difference between her and Joseph Smith?
True.
They want Joseph Smith to be this unlearned, you know, uneducated hick from upstate New York in the 1800s.
Who couldn't even read.
But where did Jody learn that?
Master manipulation techniques baked in.
I don't think she read a book to learn that.
This person knows what she's talking about. And it wasn't long before, you know, I found myself being one of those men up in front of everybody. You know, it was one of those invitations that's just like, hey, you are such a man of God, a man of truth. You can help so many men. Can you get up there and just talk about like how, you know, you've managed to have the marriage that you do and how you're so responsible and honest and humble and of course, like, you know, straighten my tie. And
which is exactly what you were seeking, right?
Yeah.
And another parallel to Mormonism. Literally one of the ways that they would talk about getting people reactivated and returning to church is giving them a calling, giving them an assignment to do
sense
at
of
church.
importance, yeah.
So, like,
and an obligation, yeah.
This is not an unfamiliar tactic.
True.
It's exactly what I was seeking. And looking back, I'm like, yeah, that was a tough one that I didn't see it, you know?
Yeah. Or you saw it and then you let other things override it, it sounds like.
Yeah. But, you know, another big part of that was what we were talking about earlier before we started this interview was there's, I don't think this is unique to the LDS culture, but I think it's very prolific in the LDS culture. There's this, you know, in LDS culture, there's this popular and longstanding tradition or teaching that the men preside in the home. The men are supposed to be the priesthood leaders. They're supposed to lead with love and kindness and tenderness, and that's what is encouraged and taught all throughout our lives, from the time we're little children singing little primary songs up until we're adults, and so we have this belief, this idea that it's like, I really have to be very sensitive and careful and respectful, and I don't want to challenge my spouse. And on the flip side, we live in a time where there is such a strong cultural push for women to rise up and become strong and become loud.
I know
Rise
he's not,
up.
I know he's not blaming a little bit of this on feminism, right?
And become independent. And so I think these two cultural trends, one from larger society, one from LDS society, they kind of clash.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think is happening, and in more homes than people would admit, is that there are very, very controlling wives, female spouses, who control from the shadows. They pull the strings. They know how to manipulate. They know how to control their husbands, and they do it very, very effectively. But it's sneaky because they don't want to appear like the bossy, controlling woman. They want to appear like the very kind, the very gentle, the meek, wife who stands behind her husband. But the reality is the husband's shaking in his boots, because if he missteps in one way and embarrasses his wife or then she's going to punish him in whatever way that, she's established in that dynamic. And that was...
I don't really understand where he's getting this idea that like men are being so submissive to their wives or whatever, because like pretty much until just the last few years since they introduced the temple ceremony, men hearkened to God and listened to counsel of God, and women hearkened to their husband and listened to the counsel of their husband. That was the order.
Yeah.
There was no women hearkening to God. They hearkened to their husband, and that was it.
Yeah.
So for him to kind of say, and I will yield that there is kind of this culture where women are performing excellence in the church, because they are, in most cases, when it comes to organizing and everything like that with the Relief Society and everything like that. But then to be like, oh, there's all these women who are controlling of their men and everything like that.
I feel like he's generalizing his experience, because this was his experience with Ruby. Like, Ruby is controlling, and Ruby will punish him if he behaves in a way that she's not going to like. Like, that was very much his experience, and he's generalized that, I think, to maybe larger proportions than exist, because, I generally see more of the reverse, right? Like, we generally see way more of women being submissive to men calling the shots, because that's the structure in Mormonism. Are there women who have controlling behaviors out there? For sure. But I think I feel like this is an overgeneralization.
Well, and maybe it's the common shared experience of the men that
the men in this group. Absolutely. Like, this is like Ruby and Jody's MO, right? Like, you have to...
They finally get that validation that they've been craving, because for the whole time they were told, you hearken to your husband and he hearkens to God, and that's how
now
it is.
You're in charge, and your man can suck it up if he's not willing to do what you tell him to do. Yeah,
especially
like, that's a very big shift.
They were the type of people who struck fear into the hearts. Their husbands were quaking in their boots, but they didn't have a doctrinal basis of it. And now here comes Jody to say, well, actually,
I'll give you a reason. Yeah.
Definitely the dynamic in my home for decades. Didn't see it, but I've come to recognize it. And now that I it's happened in my life, and I see it for what it is, and it's everywhere. It is everywhere in our culture.
That's fascinating, and that kind of plays.
I disagree. I don't know a single person that's like that.
I think this is interesting. I'd be curious to like explore this phenomenon more and what he's meaning.
Right.
But it seems, I think he's creating an incidence rate that seems higher than it is, which we tend to do that with our own experiences, right?
Right.
To like, if you're needing her validation for you to be okay, then you need to keep her happy. And if she's unhappy or isn't giving you that validation, you crumble.
Yeah, it really was a toxic brew from the beginning, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Early on.
Yeah, each of us was so insecure that we needed each other to pump the other one up. And
codependency.
And so it became, you know, right from the start a very transactional relationship where it's like, here, I'll do this for you, but you need to do this for me. And as long as we continue in that cycle, it works. But it's anything but tender. It's anything but loving, because it's all about me. You know, it's not about her. And so it's a perfect breeding ground for resentment. It's a perfect breeding ground for passive aggressiveness, silently punishing your spouse. And that kind of stuff was rampant in our marriage. And I'm not going to say it was all Ruby and not me, because
we've
I was
talked about your
participating
part, right?
in that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like if I wasn't getting, you know, my ego, you know, placated, if I wasn't getting my fears of not being enough placated, I blamed her. And, you know, and she was vice versa.
Right.
And so I think this will set the table for a character like Jody Hildebrandt to come in and say, I see what's happening. And she called it exactly as it was. But then she said, I know the solution. And here's how I'm going to help save your marriage and save your family and save your children from the inevitable, you know, destruction that is coming if you don't do something about it.
And the destruction is me.
It's crazy. I mean, I think why Jody does what she does is she clearly picks people whose marriages are on the rocks, right? Like, generally speaking, she's kind of targeting people whose marriages are in this position, because especially if it's been going on for this long and you're not going to give them any actual structural changes to make a difference, like
Jesus. Hello.
Baloney's tail in my mouth. Like, they're relying on you for improvements in their marriage. And if you give them the confidence that you can solve their problems, I also just think that's irresponsible. As a couples therapist, what I tell couples is my operating purpose here is to not keep you together or pull you apart. My operating purpose here is to help make you aware of the issues that are causing problems in your relationship, and then help each of you come to the conclusion about what is best for each of you in this relationship. Whether that means you stay together, whether that means you separate, whether that means you get divorced. Like, I am removed from the outcome of whatever happens in the therapy context. Whereas Jody should be doing it that way, but instead is like, I can fix you. And if you ever have a couples therapist that says, I can fix you, like, run the other way. Like, the idea is, like, a couples therapist might be like, oh yeah, there are behavioral things here that I think we could easily shift. I think you could easily make some changes here, and I think we could improve some things here. But, like, if you ever go to somebody who's like, oh yeah, we can fix it, because I don't know that you can. I might give you all the tools and you guys still might not do it. And then you're going to be mad at me because your relationship's not fixed, but you're not doing anything. And so, like, but that's what your role is, not to jump in and fix or save. Your role is to present them with information, allow them opportunities for change, and give them information to decide, like, what's best. And so the fact that she's going into this with the lens that I can fix your relationship is just so fucked from the start.
And the fact that she's glomming onto a population where it's more than just the idea that they are married per the law.
Yeah.
Like, the implication here, along with their relationship and their marriage, is not just that they love each other and they want to be together, they're attracted to each other or whatever. there's also this like deep-seated idea that they both received spiritual confirmation from God
To be together
that
forever.
they should be together forever.
Yeah.
For all of eternity, and that they were sealed not just for life but all eternity. So when it's coming, they're faced with the idea that they need to split up or whatever. That's just like not an option, because there's so much more that you have to face when you're staring down the barrel of that idea.
So it sounds like you and Ruby transferred your need for validation and approval from each other onto Jody to some extent.
Yeah, she became the eventually she became the authority figure, the power figure, the one that if she was praising us, then we're okay. But if she's like not happy with us or not responsive to us, then oh no, like what do we need to do to change?
Yeah.
To get her happy again. And right there is the cult. That's the signature of the cult, right?
I think both of them potentially, based on the limited information that we have about Kevin's, but also what I suspect about Ruby's childhood, is like this role that they're enacting with Jody is also, in my opinion, potentially based in a childhood wound. If you are used to codependent family structures, which is very much most Mormon families, lack of differentiation, lack of separate identity, lack of boundaries, those kinds of things, and then you come across a role where your job is to make this person happy or act in a way that makes this person happy or act in a way that causes them to not lash out at people. Like that's a childhood wound that a lot of people have. And so when a childhood part gets put in that position and sees that role, they're like, oh, we know how to do that. I know how to do that. I know how to change my behavior in order to make this person happy. That's familiar to me. Might not be good for me, but at least it's familiar. And like that connection is just right on a highway to a childhood wound. So it's easy to get, I feel like, especially if you have any kind of childhood trauma, it's really easy to get sucked into codependent relationships because the structure is familiar to you. Doesn't mean that it feels good. In fact, it's usually chaotic, but like there's a part of your nervous system that's almost at home or in comfort in chaos. And so I think they were probably potentially at even a higher like predisposition, if you will, to just knowing how to operate in this kind of dynamic instead of recognizing this and be like, you know what? This is kind of unhealthy, or I don't really like that, or I need a boundary here. Again, those are all things that Mormonism doesn't really teach either.
But if you talk to anybody who's been in a cult, they'll tell you the same thing. Like when you're in it, you don't recognize it for what it is. It's only after the fact that you go, oh my gosh, like that was both scary and wild how it got to that point.
So you're
Brain, leave it alone. Leave it alone.
We're just gonna skate
Leave it
right by that
alone.
one.
to say you were in a cult.
Oh,
And she's a cult leader.
100%. I absolutely can say I was in a cult.
Wow.
I know, big breath,
That's
right?
big. That's big.
And then I joined Connections.
Part of the power that from my perspective, that Jody had was that she combined some good mental health principles with religion and spiritual kinds of ideas too.
Yeah.
And it seemed like that it really appealed to LDS clients, that there was this spiritual or religious flavor to some of her teachings. What's your perspective on that?
Well, my perspective on that is that Jody almost exclusively targeted the LDS culture. I don't think she had any clients, at least that I was aware of, that was outside of the LDS faith and the LDS culture. She had created the perfect sales pitch for what she was offering, and it's exactly as you described.
Utah accent.
She really was like a knowledgeable and a talented therapist when she stayed in her lane.
Yeah.
Like you read her stuff.
Yeah.
Like you tell me.
And I've watched hundreds of her videos and listened to the podcast as well. And I was horrified by the lines that were crossed in the name of being a licensed therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing, like the stuff she would teach, like 80% of it or 90% of it was like spot on, good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, as a side note, that is part of what made it, at least initially, so hard when I recognized like I needed help. I was at rock bottom in this experience, to go back to a psychologist.
I bet.
And put myself back in that situation, and then have my psychologist start saying a lot of the things Jody said.
You're like, wait, no.
I know. And so
I bet you were terrified.
It was. And fortunately I was open with him to say, hold on, like, help me unbraid this. Because Jody would say the exact same thing that you're saying right now.
Yeah.
So
why should I trust you?
Yeah, exactly. Help me understand.
Yeah.
There are just so many parallels with Mormonism, the ex-Mormon experience and everything like that. Because a lot of people, when they leave the church, us included, you start hearing from other people in the same vein. They're like, well, Mormonism isn't what Christianity is about. But when I sit down and I listen to what people are telling me about other sects of Christianity, I'm like, okay, this is a lot of the same shit, and I didn't like it there.
Yep.
So why am I supposed to like it here?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to tease out. So he's going to someone who actually is going to try to help him, and he can't even, it's hard for him to tease that out actually, because most of it sounds like the same shit.
I appreciate the fact that he did go back. I hold a lot of respect for him in that regard, because I think it would be very easy to be in a situation like this and write off therapy and mental health for good.
Completely.
Like, I think I could easily see that standpoint. So I really appreciate that. And I imagine you have to have a skilled therapist to be able to present those things and separate. Okay, she told me this. What is this actually rooted in? What does this mean? How is this not is this manipulation? It would be a very unique, I feel like, therapeutic experience to be the therapist on the other end of that, to have to kind of I like that he used the word unbraid, because that's very much how it feels to me. It's like you're kind of having to pull apart the things and remove the entities from this is something that Jody taught, so it's inherently negative, versus oh, this is just a CBT principle that she stole from a decades old modality.
And so she would take, if you imagine braiding like a rope, 80% of your strands are good strands. 20% are crazy.
Yeah.
And so, but she does such a good job hiding them in there. So she has this combination of solid, mental health, psychological principles and research from, over decades, mixed with LDS doctrine and theory, mixed with, I would also say popular LDS cultural beliefs that aren't necessarily doctrine.
Visions of glory.
And we can talk more about those if you want. Mixed with a whole bunch of just natural talent as a communicator and
charisma.
That's what I've been thinking this whole time, is name a cult leader that hasn't been charismatic.
Right.
There has to be an element of charisma and almost overinflated ego, grandiosity, confidence in order to effectively do what she did. I mean,
and it's
she did it in khaki shorts and slides, but she
quarter
did
zips.
it no less.
Man, that woman knew how to buy a fucking quarter zip. But it's one of those things where you could probably learn, but some people are inherently
she just has it.
Have that quality where they can just perform.
Well, I think
and to the greatest degree.
You could probably make an argument there for trauma. I mean, she knows how to position herself to make herself likable to others. And I can easily see that being a defense mechanism, rooted in trauma, because she was not accepted for who she was. So she has to present herself in a certain way to keep herself safe. And that presentation is very far removed probably from the actual identity. But that's, we're getting more into kind of like narcissistic personality and things of that nature. But I don't doubt that it was a front for her, but it's much safer probably for her to be in that element of herself versus the traumatized, wounded parts of herself that she hasn't healed.
Charismatic. And which I know if anybody's watched like a 30-second clip of Jody, you're probably laughing at that because, she isn't a feminine, attractive woman by any means.
Wow, Kevin, what a read.
Oh, man. Dropping. He's not firing shots. He's dropping bombs. Holy shit.
Yeah, she's not feminine. No,
Right.
she does not she gives a very masculine vibe.
Right. It is funny how he does not equate charisma to like being or he equates charisma to being an eloquent speaker or whatever. And he's like, well, it's so unassuming.
Because she is kind of cringe. Like on the surface, you
Right.
watch some of it and you're like, oh my God. But like when you watch her speeches where she's doing like her, it's Dwight pounding on the podium
Yeah.
in the office, when she like really gets into it, like it's
When she has a meltdown because people aren't leaving
right.
Google
Like
reviews.
you feel the emotional intensity. And I mean, if I was resonating with her message, it would be
Right.
very easy to get sucked into something like that.
And it's really easy for us to look at her meltdown and go, that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the people who have already bought into it and are now experiencing the multitude of
Of her emotion.
her emotions in full
Well,
effect.
it's too late by that point.
Right.
It's not going to shatter anything because she's already been building herself up for you,
But she's authoritative. And nobody went to her because she was attractive or feminine. They went to her because she was supposedly the best.
She bring down the
She
hammer.
was the person that people went to when everything else failed. And she marketed herself as that.
Isn't that so inherently manipulative, though? When you market yourself as a last-ditch effort, people are coming to you in desperation. Like, people are
Yeah.
absolutely coming to you in desperation. Like, this is something a therapist should never do, I don't think. Because, like, sometimes people do come to therapy out of desperation, and those people deserve to be helped. But, like, it is
Totally.
inherently manipulative, in my opinion, to market yourself as, like, I will be the one that will fix it for you.
Right.
Because you've tried everything, but I have the answers. Like, that's what it reeks of to me. Like, there's some egocentrism happening here of like, well, there's a reason that nobody else has helped you because I'm the one that has the answers and I will be the one
Exactly.
that solves your problems.
Ultimately, you are the one who solves your own problems.
Right.
They're just guiding you through it.
Yes, and that's the way it should be. But
Yeah.
when people are that desperate, they're probably, I mean, you've tried everything. You're trying to save your marriage or you're trying to save your child or like, and everything else has failed. Why wouldn't you, especially like when you think about the tactics she used that were so extreme, would you start with the extreme when you're trying to solve a problem?
Yeah.
No, you're not going to. You're going to start and build your way up. But if you've tried a bunch of things and then finally you're desperate and she offers you an extreme, you're probably not going to reject it. You might, but you're in a position where everything else hasn't worked. And so you're basically like, you're already primed for Jody, basically.
Just imagine a little kid trying to fix a Lego set. They're coming to you now because they've already fucked it up beyond all recognition.
Right. And they're looking to you to have
And
that solution.
Yeah. And if you take it and you're like, well, you don't know shit and I'm going to fix it for you.
Well, I think that's to me, this is one of the most evil things about Jody is she marketed herself that way for a reason. She knows she is like preying on people who are at their wits' end and who are desperate.
So the people who were there were basically from day one, like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Help me. I'm
Help
desperate.
me.
Yeah.
I will do anything you say. Those were the clients she catered to.
And then she could just get her claws in and.
Mm-hmm. Now, that wasn't me. Okay. I wasn't that guy. That was my wife.
You weren't desperate at that point.
No, my wife, though, but her entry point with Jody was our children, right? Because, and we can talk more about this later, and this is part of the motivation for my working with legislators around the country to try to create new laws to protect children influencers, children who are on social media. The fact of the matter is that social media When children are influencers on social media, it's like a narcissism factory. And children really do become little narcissists, and nobody is immune to it. And so it really started to affect our children. And
I think this is a point. We're always talking about protecting the children in this context. And I think this is a really important point because of the impact. Like, he's putting it more bluntly than maybe I would. But the impact on children's self-esteem of being able to see the perceptions of every single person. Because, like, you think about child teenage development, right? Like, kids struggle enough with validation or non-validation from their peers and that kind of perspective and the impact of, like, bullying and, you know, teenage development, junior high, middle school, like, all of that stuff is hard enough. I can't imagine exposing teenagers, children, to every possible opinion that could ever fucking exist on the internet and then expect them to grow up into well-adjusted human beings. Like, it's just not, and especially when it's families putting children in these positions where you're seeing kids being bratty and then people are commenting on how bratty your kids are and, like, the impact on self-esteem, or, like, you know, like Sherry when she was dealing with, like, the appearance stuff or acne or, like, whatever, and, like, putting all that on, like, full frontal display, and, like, how people don't understand that they create an environment where children become dependent on the feedback and the perspective that they get from people on the internet. Like, I look at Tiffany Nelson and her children, I think, are prime examples of that. I think Cassidy Nelson is a prime example, like, damn near patient zero for this kind of behavior and what it does to your personality, your identity, and your self-esteem, and how you present yourself to the world. And, like, just the thumbnails. Like, what concerns me is how these children grow up and view themselves is not an accurate perception potentially of who they are, because the images of themselves on the internet are not even accurate. Like, we've talked about the Not Enough Nelson's thumbnails before.
They're completely different people.
They're completely different. Like, they don't even look the same. They're lightening skin tones. They're bleaching hair. They're whitening teeth. They're, like, doing all these things that are intentionally not the way they look, you know? And so I think he has a point here, and not just, like, we need to protect children on the internet, but we need to protect children from developing these mechanisms that then shape who they become, because Cassidy will never get off the internet. There's a dependence on the internet that happens when you are raised in this kind of context. And it's not entirely on Cassidy. Her mom is partly to blame here. But, like, what a disservice to them that they can't move away from this now. Because, like it or not, and most of them are probably unwilling to admit it, there becomes a dependence on the perception of the internet.
We could see it. We could see it in their behavior. Some worse than others. And Ruby could see it. And she was panicked because her greatest insecurity, her greatest fear was, I am not a good mother. And she wanted more than anything to have healthy, happy children. And that's the irony of this, right?
Right. Because
now if you think of Ruby Franke, you think the worst mother in the history of mothers. And that is all Jody.
I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Jody preyed on something that was already there. But, like, here's what I see. I see Ruby's childhood was not great, in my opinion, from what we know. And I think Ruby wanted to be a better mom than she did. But I think the trap that sometimes we fall into these dynamics where our moms weren't great and then we want to be better moms, there's the fear that we will become our mothers. There's the fear that we will become like them. And the answer to that is often anxiety. And what is anxiety really like? Control. And so control comes in and sells you on an illusory idea that you can control your kids into becoming happy and healthy, which is just not the truth, right? It's an illusion. You can't control how your kids feel generally most of the time. You can control some factors, but you can't control them all. But I see control as a part of her coming in, like, guns blazing and saying, this is how we do it. This is how we do it. And instead, it took over to an almost, like, not even almost, to an extreme degree, to the point that control can even justify abuse. Like that part can even justify abuse because they're like, well, if we do this, they'll be healthy. They'll be well adjusted. They won't go to hell. And I know that sounds crazy, but like a part, especially a traumatized part coming in and taking over like that makes a whole lot of sense to me. And that's not justification by any means. Do not get me wrong. Do not misinterpret what I'm saying here. But I could easily see that core fear coming and control being an element that comes out of it and says, oh, well, we can just do this. We can just control them. I had a controlling mother. And same thing. I think the intention was good, but if you can't rope that part back in and go, you know what, we actually can't control these things, and controlling to this extent is actually harmful to children. But she's too far gone by that point. But that's what I see happening here. I could easily see this playing out in that way. And I think Jody exploited that.
Yeah.
But I think Jody exploited something that was already there. Oh,
definitely. And we've said that a lot. So if you were new to that idea, that is full what we believe. In the exact same way, there was ground laid for Kevin to be manipulated by Jody.
For sure.
Ruby had ground laid to be manipulated by Jody as well. And that's why we on the outside who don't have those conditions laid for us are like, how the fuck did it ever happen like that?
So you don't hold Ruby responsible?
Oh, I totally do.
Okay. So when you say hold Jody,
I totally do.
More.
But like, I don't believe for a minute that Ruby had the intention of like harming or hurting our children at any point.
Gotcha.
I think her intention is not. I know because I've read her writings, and I was married to her for over 20 years.
Yeah.
I know how much she wanted our children to thrive. But her fear drove the bus the majority of the time.
That's therapy language. But I completely agree. I don't think there are just evil people out there, right? Like I think Jody falls into more of that category for me. I still think Ruby is evil on some level. But like I think what people don't understand, like this is really nuanced, and this is where I think people get frustrated with me. But the way that I see it is like nobody really sets out with this intention, right? Nobody sets out with the intention to abuse their kids, usually. There are exceptions to that rule. There are like horrible, evil people out there, right? But I think what happened was the fear took over. I almost wonder, the way that Kevin words this is almost like they were seeing behaviors in their children that were arising as a result of them being online and that exposure. And I wonder if there was a part of Ruby who said, oh shit, what if this was the wrong call? What have we done here? And so that part went, oh, no. We have to fix this. What are you going to do to fix this? And went into complete extreme overdrive in trying to repair the mess that she had created.
Right. Well, and how do we tease out, are these behaviors that were arising because of their existence online, or are they behaviors that are arising at the same time as that?
Yeah. Or was she not prepared for normal development? Was she not prepared for teenagers to be teenagers? Like, again, this is where that control theme comes back in, right? If my kids are rebelling against me in any way, that means I'm out of control. That means I need to take control. Right. It's a lot of times the mentality around abuse.
Because maybe it was developmentally appropriate behavior.
Some of it probably was.
And stuff like that. But there's the veneer, or like the added perception that this is coming up because of what we're doing, and what we are doing is at the behest of what I've wanted to do.
Yeah.
I'm driving the bus here. And was it something that she didn't want to confront? Like, oh, I'm to blame for these behaviors, and now I've got to scramble to fix things.
I think I could easily see that being the case. And again, this is not to say that she's not responsible, but when people ask like why, this is the conversation that is interesting to have, because I think these are the motivators behind the why. And the why does not necessarily square with accountability, right? Like the accountability is an entirely different thing. She deserves to be where she is, and she deserves to take accountability and needs to make restitution in whatever way makes sense for these children by all means. Like the accountability in here doesn't square up necessarily. But that's why I like having these conversations, is because I think exploring these things, especially when they come out of trauma, is indicators for us to be more aware of our stuff, to be more aware of where these themes might show up in our lives and be like, oh, might need to pay attention to that.
And fear drives an individual to do things that aren't wise.
No.
And so Jody exploited that fear and led her to believe things that got, increasingly crazier and crazier and crazier and crazier. Enter in now the apocalyptic element of this story, the supernatural element of this story. And all of a sudden, Ruby was like, oh my gosh, she was in Planet Extreme.
We're running out of time kind of feeling like I've got to save my kids.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
And Jody was like just stoking that fire. And so
surely that couldn't be due to them every goddamn general conference saying, the Savior is coming. The end is near. You need to be prepared.
Oh, 100%. They were going into, he calls it apocalyptic, but this is just second coming Mormonism discourse.
Right.
Two of them really were like, I know I've heard, at least initially when they were arrested, like this Thelma and Louise comparison. They were, but not in the way people think.
Right.
It was like each of them was mentally unstable in their own way. And they just complemented each other in such a, I'll say, a perfect way that they created this perfect storm, that the two of them together were a force.
Tell me what you think about my analysis. I think Ruby was looking to Jody for credibility and to become something other than a momfluencer. Like, I can be certified, I can become a coach through Jody's methodology. So it gave her more credibility as like a professional. And Jody was looking to Ruby to have access to millions of people. And that kind of fed her need to share her message and get more exposure for her methodology. And then it just kind of created this perfect, like you said, perfect storm.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think it's a little deeper than that.
Okay.
I think Ruby had multiple motivations. I think one of them was, that. One, she wanted to be that mom that saved her children from the monster of greed, the monster of narcissism, the monster of fame.
Just like her mom never saved her. Do we repeat these patterns? This is a way for her inner child to kind of rehash this thing in a way with a potentially different ending. But the thing is, if we're not in control and aware of how we're repeating those cycles, they generally end the same. We end in the same toxic relationships. We make the same stupid decisions. Like, that's generally how it goes until we realize and can intervene on the actual need of what's happening there, instead of just like allowing the cycle to repeat and with hope for a different ending.
You always think you're built different until you're not.
No.
Right?
And popularity. She wanted to be that mom. But the second one is really important. And this is the one that actually people see the most. She needed to be seen as that mom. Does that make sense? It's not enough that she was that mom.
She needed other people to validate that.
To validate it, to see her and praise her as the woman who bucked the trend, who gave away millions of dollars or walked away from millions of dollars in fame to save her children, save her family. And she wanted all of that glory. She wanted all of that attention. And that's what Jody was promising her. And Jody, on the flip side, yes, she wanted access to like Ruby's audience of millions of people, but she also wanted access to Ruby's, her personality, her reputation, her charisma. Ruby was in her own way a very talented show person. She could make flipping pancakes entertaining. And so her ability to tell a story.
I beg to differ.
I mean, I get it.
Obviously, it appealed to people.
It worked for millions of people.
Yeah.
I mean, but I get what he's saying here, because I think what Jody saw is like not only the millions of people that she could have access to, but I think Ruby represented a side that Jody doesn't really have. Like, Ruby's very feminine. Ruby's very like Utah culture-esque blonde woman with the lipstick and the Botox and the like. Ruby represents a level, like a mirror of like almost Utah culture that Jody does not embody at all.
Totally.
And like meshing them together almost creates this very weird, almost balanced dynamic.
Totally.
Her ability to portray, you know, this virtuous family life was second to none. Like, you don't become one of the most, you know, famous family vlogs in the world just off of, you know, challenges and following trends alone. Like, you have to have some real talent there, and she did.
I don't know.
I mean,
Never
it
mind.
worked.
So
It worked
those
somehow.
two things fed off of each other. Oh, one other thing. I think Jody also had this inherent need to prove her methods right.
So like your family could be the example, the evidence, the testimonial. Like, I saved the Franke family.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what
got
she
it.
wanted. And she wanted everyone to see it. So those two just fed off of each other. And they needed me out of the way because I was increasingly starting to pump the brakes on the crazy.
Tell me, like, how? How did you try to pump the brakes? Like, what were some ways?
Well, and I go into more detail in the documentary series, but and so I'd refer, you know, interested listeners to that. But in a nutshell, it was like, you know, the things that were important to me, like the fame, the money, all that stuff to inflate my ego. Like, she was walking away from it. She was talking about, like, Ruby was talking about signing over the 8 Passengers brand and business to Jody at no cost. Like, here's our multi-million-dollar company.
That's huge.
We're going to give this to you.
Because you're going to save our family? Like, what was she getting from it?
Well, because by that point, and again, I don't want to make this all about Ruby, because I also was in the boat of like, Jody is elect. Jody is chosen by God to do something special. This is our way of contributing to that effort. But, you know, I was
like
never
an offering, like a tithing offering kind of thing?
like a test from God. Like, are you, you know, like Isaac,
sacrifice.
Abraham was willing to sacrifice Isaac. Are you willing to sacrifice this big brand and business for the good of humanity? Like, you know, that's how it was framed. I wasn't.
That's
The parallels, but the dangerous mentality that anybody,
Right.
like, this is just general religious doctrine, right? Like, this is just from the Bible. This is used by multiple religions, not just Mormonism. And to be
It's a
able to
trope.
wield this, like,
Right.
to wield this as a weapon to people and say, like, is your faith grand enough that you'd be willing to kill your own child over it? And my answer emphatically is no, but, like,
nope.
absolutely not. But, like, this is something where it, like, really makes people think. Like, do I have enough faith
Right.
to do that? And so for him, I can see, like, well, yeah, like, giving up a child would be the greatest sacrifice. This also feels like a really big sacrifice. They're similar. But, like, how manipulative of Jody to grab this and wield this, just like, you know, other pastors out there that exist in the world that do the same thing.
Right.
But, like, crazy. She knew exactly what she was doing.
If Jody can take an idea like that and use it as a weapon, just remember, she's not the only one who can.
No.
You're like, nope.
I was like, Ruby, you're crazy. Like, this is crazy. We have a very good family friend who at the time was our manager, and he was like just blowing the whistle at this point, just like
this-
whoa, red flags.
SOS.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
And Ruby fired him.
Oh, wow.
It was on the spot.
So then
Fired
you were
him.
on your own trying to stop the train.
And I was just trying to like, but do it in a way that wasn't like going to get me punished. And it's important to share that, because as part of this, you know, by this point, Jody had Ruby's ear, and so she was constantly like giving her instructions and feeding her information and building her suspicions around me. Like, oh, Kevin isn't what you think he is. Kevin's just like every other man, but he's so sneaky and manipulative that he hides it. So he's more dangerous than other men, you know? And so Ruby started to really get those suspicions. And that's what ultimately led to our first separation. And it, you know, so everyone knows about like the separation where I left the home and I was out in Jody's care. And that was horrific. We can talk about that if you want, but that was hell. But prior to that, what most people don't know about was there was a separation before that was about 3 months in length, but it was what Jody and Ruby called an in-home separation. And, you know, other previous clients from Jody have talked about these kinds of things publicly. It's one of these things where the wife just lays down the laws of the house. It's like, you are allowed to come at this time, go at this time. You are allowed to eat your food in this space. You are allowed to sleep in this space. Everything else is off limits. And if you violate it, that shows me.
So, as somebody who has worked with people through separations, like, I just want to make it clear from a couples therapy perspective, what he's describing is not a separation. I know this is Jody's instruction, but like, this is not how people handle separations. Like, I encourage and will help people in having a conversation around boundaries, especially if like parenting is involved and what does it look like, and like we hash out those details. But like, this is a collaborative effort. This is not one partner tells the other partner, you have to sleep on the couch for 6 months, or you have to sleep in only this room for 3. Like, this is a collaborative effort that I assist them in developing a plan that works for both of them. And sometimes compromises need to be made, but I'm never going to advise somebody to make a compromise that like infringes on their autonomy as an individual and like their needs, essentially. Like, that's insane to me. So like, I just want to clarify that like, this is nothing like what it should be.
Are you telling me that you wouldn't recommend that one partner becomes a prison warden and the other person becomes incarcerated in their own home?
No, I definitely would not. I would have a problem with that.
Glad we're on the same page.
You don't care about me. You don't care about our relationship. You don't care about our marriage, and I will act accordingly.
So you lose all power.
Yep. So, you know, prior to all of this, like, we're going to give away the business and stuff, I had just been released or freed from this 3-month in-home separation. And that was hard. That was so hard.
Yeah.
It was honestly abusive. And
you just have to please her, like keep her happy, right? So she allows you to eat in the main room.
Yeah, or if, you know, it gets to the point where if she graces you with any interaction or even a kind one word in a text, you're like jumping through the roof with, you know, happiness. I mean, that's how starved for affection you become. And again, remember,
like
let's, you know,
deprivation. Like, it's, you're depriving them of connection, attention, those kinds of things intentionally, so that when she does reach out to him, she's like, he's hanging on her every word because he's finally getting what he was looking for. Like, she's created the situation that purposefully isolates him, and then he's stuck in shame, waiting for her approval or validation or whatever, and then the cycle can just continue. Like, it keeps her in complete control.
let's base this again, what you know about me now, having all this insecurity, having all this low self-esteem. Now it's like, if I want any of that from the person who's the most important person in my life, my spouse, I have to earn it.
Wow.
And yeah.
That's so sad. That's so abusive. Like, you don't get to be a person. You have to perform like a dog for a treat.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
And what is horrific, I've come to learn, is that
Well, and it's crazy too, because I think about like this is a rare dynamic in Mormonism for men, but this is a dime a dozen dynamic
For
for
women.
women,
For sure.
and that doesn't get
Talk about.
hardly any
Yeah.
airtime.
there are former clients of Jody who are still in that dynamic, where the men are still in that mode and their wives are lording over them and are, like a dog, making those men like appease them every moment of the day so they can get their attaboy or their treat.
From what I read and from the documentaries and stories that I've read, sexuality was a big component in this, like shaming men for their sexuality.
Yeah.
Was that part of the separation, was withdrawal of sexual contact? And
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
So how was sex woven into this?
Talk with any man how it would be to go 3 months without sex with your wife. Like, it's hard.
Was there also sexual shame that that she was kind of putting onto you?
Yeah, I
that time?
think what Jody was really good at in this arena was taking doctrine and teachings from the LDS Church. So she had like quotes from church leaders over the decades. Especially, she loved quotes back from the 70s and 80s that were a lot more, I don't know how to say it, like, what would I call it? Controlling,
Orthodox?
a lot more orthodox than they are today. Maybe I'd say,
I mean, mind you, what I find interesting about that is it's true. Like, they were much more the little factory talks that we've talked about
always comes to
before.
mind.
They were much more intense. I mean, banning oral, saying that they weren't allowed to do it, and then never actually retracting it. And like, the interesting thing to me about all of this, though, is like, while at the time those were much more orthodox teachings, the teachings never changed. So like, nothing ever actually definitively changed. There never was like hey, we're teaching this differently now. It just sort of evolved to where they don't talk about it in that context anymore. They don't hit it as hard, but there was never a definitive like, hey, we're going to stop teaching chastity this way, or we're going to drop the purity culture stuff, because now it's just not as like irksome. Like, it's just not as like sharp, almost, is the way that I would put it.
They beat it to death after the .com era, to the point where it's in people's minds that it's dangerous for their kids to have unfettered access to the internet.
Which
it
is,
like
but not for that reason necessarily.
It's like this implicit idea that we can't, back in the day, they were like, you shouldn't have a computer in a place alone behind a closed door.
Yeah.
I feel like now they don't have to say it as much because people have learned, that opens the door to temptation.
Sure.
Or,
But this isn't just for children. This is like adults.
Right.
Like, adults shouldn't have a computer. And like, for children, yes, obviously we don't want children having access to adult content. Like, let's be clear, so somebody in the comments doesn't get mad. We're talking about adults. Like, they're saying adults don't have the self-control and the capacity to restrain themselves from things like this, and that you should be doing those kinds of things. But that's what's interesting, is when I hear people talk about it, they're like, well, back then it was a lot different. And I'm like, yeah, but like, they just don't talk about it now.
I feel like it's
still there.
I feel like it's just out of the cycle. Once it starts coming back up again a bunch, then it'll probably
just be cyclical again. Yeah.
Start bringing it up all the time again.
Like, today it's more about the spirit of the law, but back then it was the letter of the law. Like, you can do this, you can do this, you can't do this, or so Jody was very much about that. But I think the most damaging lie that she would teach, and she would only teach it to people that she had really got her hooks into. She wouldn't ever present this like in a first interaction. Yeah. Because she would know that people would just run away.
It's too
like
extreme.
they wouldn't listen to it, right? It was this idea that sexual attraction is lust by its nature. So if I'm walking down the street and I see a woman and I'm like, feel attraction to that woman, that's lust. I just lusted.
Which is bad.
Which is bad.
And sinful.
Which, yeah, she would then use that scripture that's like, if you lust upon a woman, you've committed adultery with her in your heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she'd be like, you basically just had sex with that woman.
Oh my God.
Instead of you're human, you notice beauty, and that's totally normal.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And so it would get to that point where it's like, as a man, once you buy into that, try going out into the world and walking around and being just like, you end up like putting your blinders on and just looking at the ground, because you're just like, I don't want to look at anybody, because if I feel any sort of emotion or attraction, or I think, oh, that person's attractive, I just lusted.
And that's bad. And then I have to be punished.
And then Jody was also a master of how do I say it? She was a master of extremism. So she would say things. It wasn't just that, oh, you lust. It's you are an addict. Everything was you are an addict.
And was this just for men? Like women could have sexual thoughts?
No, she would do it to women too.
Okay. I just haven't heard about that teaching with women.
And I know it's not popular and it's not out there, but she had women groups. And she was just as abusive to the women in those groups as, she was to the men in the men's groups.
Wow.
This also mimics what it was like up through the 2000s in the church, because women were not getting regular talks about the dangers of pornography. That was only coming up in general priesthood session, and they were talking about it in general conference, but they were gearing it toward men, and they were talking about
taught how to prevent men from having the sexual thoughts, not
exactly. They didn't want to become pornography to the men by shouldering their
it was very scandalous.
Like
if there was like a woman, like a young woman in the ward who had like gotten in trouble for watching pornography, it was a very like controversial thing. It was almost like, I feel like, more shameful than men doing it, because women, like, Mormonism doesn't treat women as like inherently sexual,
right?
Sexually, funnily enough. But yeah, it was a very different experience on both sides. But I mean, I think Jody gets satisfaction from hurting people. So I think she hates men more, but I still think she gets satisfaction out of like berating men and women. Like, it probably doesn't matter.
Totally. Well, and the whole addiction idea of it all. Because I remember in church and people being like, well, anything could be an addiction. Well, no, not really.
That rhetoric is really harmful.
So, yeah, it's just funny how it's bled into other things from there.
But a lot of times what she would focus on with the women was, you're allowing yourself to be placed in this box. You're allowing this man to have power over you, to lord over you. You need to rise up. You need to take control, be independent. You need to take charge. So she was training women to become kind of these lords, right, over their spouses. But she would never.
I think this is so interesting because, one, it reflects her mentality, and I think she's projecting her feelings about the patriarchal nature of society and Mormonism in particular. Like, she's giving these women a reason to feel wrongly about patriarchy, but that doesn't stem from the church. It's not the church, it's just your relationship dynamic. You fix your relationship dynamic, that'll solve it. But it's almost like the way that I view that is just like rising women up to like the same level of men, to where both of you are on the same playing field in terms of decision making. We're talking like equity here. Like, we're both in the same position. We both hold the same amount of power. We have a balanced dynamic. We both have a say in decision making. Like, that's what I'm looking for, where I feel like Kevin sees it as like, it has to be like, it's women over men, which is probably what Jody was advocating for. But I think what he's doing is conflating this with feminism. Like, I'm getting the vibe that he's conflating this with like, this is what feminism teaches, is independence means women over men, which to me, this just illustrates a lot of the perspectives that men have about feminism, is like, if we rise women up It's not to an equal vantage point. It's so women can lord over us because we lord over women, right? So like it couldn't be women just want to be on an equitable playing field. It's they have to be in control over us. And like in Jodi's method, that's what it was. It sounds like. Absolutely. Right. But like that's not what it's supposed to be. Like this isn't what like feminism advocates for.
Totally.
And I fear that he might be taking this as like a true healing. I feel like here of like a point where I would be worried for Kevin is him taking this experience, almost validly so, like almost I can kind of understand it, taking this experience as justification for like why like feminism and independent women are like bad. That's what this turns into for him, and that's what I would worry about. I would understand how his brain would get there because he's had this horrible experience, but what I would want is his brain to not equate this to feminism, because that's not what this is. This is abuse. This is women abusing men. But like, this is not feminism. That's not what that is. You know what I mean? And I worry that his brain might conflate them. And if he has a whole lot of emotional intelligence, maybe he's sorted through that. And I would love that for him if he did. But I could easily see this being like somebody in this position could fall into like a manosphere space. Because like, yeah, women are terrible. Let me tell you how terrible women are. My wife abused me. And all these other women are being controlled and abused by their wives. And like, I could easily see this being a slippery slope into that kind of misogynistic content.
Yeah.
Frame it that way, but that's exactly what she was doing. Wow. And the men, she was constantly breaking down. And she alone wasn't doing that. Like she would have her attack dogs in these men's groups. Men that were like so invested in getting her praise that when she would say, she would often like, in these Zoom meetings and stuff, she would text or DM them and say like, this man is lying. He's manipulating everybody. Confront him.
Go after him.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And so
oh
like,
my God.
It's just like little robots. You do. I did that.
Were there some people in the group that actually had compulsive sexual behavior, or were they all just regular
No, absolutely there were.
People that were just having attraction?
No, there were definitely.
This is important because if she does not have people in the group who have compulsive, and I love that Julie uses this language, who has compulsive sexual behaviors, right? Out of control sexual behaviors, not sex addiction, not those kind of behaviors. That's not what we're talking about. Like, we're talking about these out of control behaviors. If they are not in the group, then the people who are on the more normal scale of sexual behavior are not going to lump themselves in the same shameful category as the people who have like maybe moralistic or like behaviors that are inappropriate. They're going to like lump themselves in with them, and it's going to feed the shame. It's going to feed the shame cycle, right? So like if those people aren't in the group, then we start to like get into a place where it might start to like normalize. Like we might start to scale and normalize some of these things as like not that bad. But like if I'm in the group and we've got like a person who is like watching people without their knowledge or performing things that are inappropriate or like doing really unhealthy sexual behaviors, then like or crimes, what she gets to do there without even explicitly telling them is say, you're the same. You are the same as these people. Your thoughts are the same, or you could lead, these thoughts could lead you to be this person. And that inherently makes their group, like the shame cycle, even more effective because she doesn't have to explicitly tell them that. They come to that conclusion on their own.
Yeah. Just imagine showing up and you're like, oh, wow, I'm in the same place as a person who is committing actual crimes.
And I watch porn once a month. Yeah.
Wow. It is a dire circumstance. And then, you know, you start to put, and with those added little attack dogs or whatever he was talking about, it just adds to the credibility that she has to be able to suss out these things. Mm-hmm. And then you just start policing yourself.
Yep.
Eventually. Especially if you get it, you know, knocked down a peg by one of these guys who is vying for her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or worse than you.
Worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely people in the group that had compulsive sexual behavior.
But she kind of lumped everybody together?
She lumped everybody together. And I think, you know, that had virtues. Like, I think the people who were in the compulsive category, the ones who are actually like criminally, you know, committing acts that were criminal, that it made them feel like, oh, I'm not so different than everybody else. Like,
Misery loves company.
and to them, it kind of lifted them up and helped them feel like, oh, I'm more normal. But to everybody else, it was this alarming feeling of like, oh my gosh, like things are worse than I thought.
Like, I'm like them.
I'm like them. I'm an addict.
So is that part of how she convinced you that you were dangerous to your family?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, that is how she convinced me, and other men too. I mean, I wasn't the only one that got banished to separation, right?
It seems like a pattern over a long period of time that she would do that with couples.
Yeah, and the whole purpose of it was to just break the man down.
Yeah.
Strip him of every sense of ego and power and make him very, very compliant to his wife's desires and wants and needs. And so it wasn't healthy at all for a relationship. The ironic thing, though, is that there were silver linings to it. Because again, a lot of the things she was saying, like, were true. Like, the reason you're doing all this is because you're so insecure. The reason you're an addict is because you are so insecure. You need external validation for everything. And so you turn to sex. Even though I wasn't turning to sex. With the exception of, I did, like with my wife, enjoy to have sex and would, like, I think many men seek it out throughout the week. But, you know, and certainly there were other men there who were like peeping Toms or who were like in multiple sexual relationships with and affairs and things like that. You know, she would say it's all the same. You just pick your poison, how you act out to try to get that external hit or validation to like cure, you know, you're trying to cure your insecurity. That's why you do it. And so in that sense, like my personal healing journey actually started in the midst of hell.
Say more about that.
Well, that separation where she was acting way outside of her bounds as a licensed professional. Now she's mixing in religion, mixing in her belief that God was talking with her and instructing her
and
how
moving
to
in
like,
with you.
Okay, he's going to start going on to something else. And I feel like stopping at that point was kind of a good halfway point if we want to continue on doing this without making this episode unreasonably
4 hours long. Well, here's the thing: is I'm totally fine to do a part 2. I'm always skeptical when Kevin does interviews because the last one I was like, I can't. Can we just like? There was nothing. Right. I was not getting anything out of it. Like there was not anything that he hadn't answered before that I found interesting. Really.
I'm going to fault the interviewer on
it's
that one.
100%
She did not have very good questions.
It was 100% the interviewer. Maybe he just wasn't ready to share this openly or whatever. But like this is fantastic. I think Julie's questions are fantastic. I think this is way more introspective than anything that I have seen from him thus far. It's giving me like really interesting like food for thought and insights around like why Ruby and Jody did some of these things, and it's fascinating. And so I'm loving this interview, and I would happily sit down and do part 2 for the purpose of like I don't want this video to be 4 hours long. Like I know some of you would watch it, but like YouTube already hates us for being long-winded. And so if we split this into 2 parts, we do one part now, one part a little bit later on so that we get the full vibe of it. And obviously like biggest shout out to Julie for this. Like if you don't want to wait to watch it with us or you want to watch it cohesively, her channel.
Actually, please, I would like you to go over to the original and show her some love. Leave a like on that.
Leave a comment. Tell her we sent you. You don't have to do that, but
we don't have the credibility that she has, but she doesn't have the subscribers that we have. So I think
she's way bigger than us on any other platform except here. So like, go like it, leave a comment, subscribe. I think this was like very well done, and I'm looking forward to watching the rest. So like, if you guys want a part 2, tell us in the comments. If you don't, and you're fine with half, great, but tell us in the comments so we know what to do and we can make a decision moving forward. If enough of you want it, we'll be happy to do it.
I'll tell you the time code. We're at about 54 minutes. Go watch the other half and let us know what you want to hear about here.
Right. Or like a lot of people just watch this stuff with us. And so I know you guys like both parts, but I always want your feedback. So drop
Totally.
it in the comments and let us know. I will link this video in the description and Julie's channel in the description so that you can go like follow and comment and everything. But yeah, this was like by
Eye-opening.
far. I mean, I
For
didn't
real.
watch the Hulu doc, so I know like ours was coming out, and so I didn't want to. But this was like by far, I think, the most insightful.
Totally, especially about
I've
the
heard
inner
from him.
workings of like the things that were going on. Because I mean, it is true. Everybody focuses on the actual
salaciousness.
crimes
Yeah.
and the sensationalism of it all.
I'm more interested in the why.
Right.
Like, give me the why. I want to understand. I doubt they're going to touch on the like sexual element that existed between Ruby and Jody. I would be really surprised if that got touched on.
Yeah, I would too.
But I think that is an interesting element of this as well.
Thank you everybody for joining us. If you'd like to see more about this stuff, or if we do the part 2, hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get notifications when we do that. You can also continue to support us and get access to exclusive content by becoming a member of the channel. Buttons right next to it, or becoming a patron. You also get access to watch parties and other things that we like to do.
We're watching Secret Lives of Mormon Wives right now.
Right now, we're probably going to be wrapping it up very soon.
But we'll be watching for next season also. So
Yeah.
if you want to hop on the train for next season, make sure you're here.
You can also find us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, on TikTok. Also, now I'm going to be uploading clips to Facebook. So you can find us at Jordan and McKay on those ones,
If you're
or
old like us and have Facebook,
Viral Virtue on Facebook. Viral
I literally
Virtue
use
with
it
Jordan
for
and
work.
McKay.
It's garbage AI slop.
Yeah, sorry. We gotta dilute the AI slop a little bit by putting it out there. If you want to join our Discord, we have a Discord server as well, full of like-minded, awesome people, great community. You can find the invite link for that in the description down below. As always, thank you for joining us. Thanks for sticking around. Sorry it was long-winded, and sorry that we had some technical issues in there. that
I
are now
swear,
on the
as always, people will comment and say that we have audio issues, and I swear, guys, that we check it and then we upload it to YouTube, and it goes
and something changes.
it
I
goes
don't know what it is.
stupid. I don't understand what's happening.
I don't know
So
what it is.
like
These ones, unfortunately, I was only able to catch, but
I think So just know we're working on it. We're trying to figure out a fix. It's YouTube.
it's YouTube.
It's freaking YouTube, and I don't know what to do about it. But just so you know, we are seeing and trying to fix.
But thank you for sticking with us. We love you. You're all amazing. Have an amazing holiday
If you celebrate.
rest of the time, and we'll see you next time.